friends, what's up? It's another week and another story to tell you. So the other night, so I play competitive video games, and I've got my headset on, I got my mic, I got my controller, and I'm playing with this team, right? And we're just killing it. And that was a lie. We were losing like crazy. We were not doing well. And I have this cat named Nigel. And Nigel was needing my attention so bad. And I'm like, I'm in this game. I have to communicate with my team. I have to do all this. And the way he gets my attention is he just yells. He just meows and meows and meows and meows. And if that doesn't work, he has a tactic of jumping on the couch, running across me, and running to the other side of the room. And then he would jump up on the couch, run across me. He just does this over and over again. And if I have a controller, it's hard. And he's running across me, still doesn't work. So then he gets up on my coffee table, and he starts rubbing his cute little head against my controller. And of course I'm like, Nigel, stop. And the people on my mic are like, who's Nigel? None of us named Nigel, right? And I'm like, it's my cat, right? And so I'm trying to get him off, and finally, like, I get mad, and just in a moment, I grab a pillow, and I toss it at him. I'm like, Nigel, you need to stop, right? Like, I'm gonna get him to stop because he speaks English, right? So he dodges the pillow, he takes off running, and I go back to the game, whatever, and then I look in the corner of my eye, and there he is, like, sitting there next to the pillow. And I look over and go back to my game, right? And peek back over, and he's just sitting there, like, looking at me. And immediately, this knot of guilt builds up in my stomach as I'm just like, I just threw a pillow at the greatest cat that has ever lived. And I felt so terrible. So I get done with the game and I put it down. And I begin to have that, like, inner voice, that inner conversation in with me where the voice is just like, you're a terrible person, right? And I'm like, you know, and I don't know if you've ever had it, but just that thing inside of you of just like, we gotta make things okay. So finally I stand up and kind of stretch out a little bit and walk over, and I scoop my boy up and I look at him and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like, I should not have thrown a pillow at you. I should have just heard what you have to say. And he looked at me and he did not care at all. He just wanted some food, right? But you ever had that? Like just that knot in your stomach between you and somebody else? We call this like the elephant in the room. Ever had somebody, whether it's a family member or whatever it might be, or it might be that person in line at the supermarket that you cut in front of, you stole their parking spot, and here you are seeing them again, and there's that kind of like, ooh, kind of feeling. Yeah. That feeling that you have is divine. That feeling you have is what connects you to the mysterious God that is. You see, last week we kind of talked about this writing in the book of Colossians that says that for God, the plan, like the goal of everything that we know in life, the plan of the divine is to reconcile all things unto himself. To make all right in the world. Like, that's the plan, that's the direction. And last week we kind of talked about a little bit like where that has to start. It has to start in us. Jesus teaches this idea of like the goal, like the golden thing here is to treat others the way we would like to be treated, to love our neighbor as we would love ourselves. And last week I talked about how can we love others without loving ourselves. And it's very difficult to have that conversation because many of us, when we think of loving ourselves, we think of being like extremely selfish. But would you also agree that sometimes there's some people out there that are incredibly selfish and they don't love themselves? It's like it's two different discussions there. So last week I talked about you gotta reconcile things in yourself. You have to reconcile the junk. You have to reconcile the trauma. You have to reconcile that you have to make some peace and plant it so that it can grow something alive in you. But today we got to talk about the other half, loving our neighbor. If we're going to reconcile all things alongside the entire universe, we have to do that with other people. Now, think about the moment when I talk about the elephant in the room. Think about that time where an elephant got born, whether it's with ourselves, with a family member, a friend, a stranger. It usually goes something like this. They have a concern, they have a frustration, they have a confusion, they have a hurt. And they come to you and they take all the risk and they sort of vomit this onto you, whether they're angry or quiet or whatever it might be, and you're receiving this information. And as you're receiving this, out of love, we respond with, oh, let me tell you how wrong you are, right? We've all done it, right? They just poured out everything. We're like, well, in everything you've said, here's the 3 things I disagree with, right? Or let me remind you how small or silly your ideas are. Let me remind you, you must be crazy. What's wrong with you? Or they receive all this information. We're like, well, here's my 10 facts of how you are wrong. Or let me remind you of the laundry list of things I know about you so that you have no credibility and everything you're feeling is just simply wrong. So let me impede on you and change and correct your viewpoint. And those interactions always go well, right? That is the birthplace of elephants in the room. This strategy, this technique we turn to so much that has done so well for us is nothing new. In fact, 2,000 years ago in the first century, it had a name, it had a phrase, and that phrase came with a lot of power, and that phrase was Pax Romana. 2,000 years ago, there was this thing called the Roman Empire. It's the largest military superpower in all of history. And they had this vision under this emperor who claimed he was the son of God, claimed he was going to bring universal peace and prosperity. And the way he was going to do that was to get everybody under him and on board. It sounds like a great idea. And his idea was he was going to spread peace all over the known world. And the way that peace came was through Pax Romana. It means peace through victory. Their idea of peace was to win. They were winners. That's what they did. We win all the time. We are right. They would show up to your village and they would draw their sword and they would say, we have better weapons, better technology, we're more organized, we have more resources and money. You can't win. So either die or join us and have peace. I think all of us, when described that, would say that's not peace. That's not peace. Then why do we do it? Why do we still use this strategy today? We still are doing it. We're still thinking that we can make peace with one another by just simply reminding people of their wrongness and our rightness. As I think about today's world, we are more divided than ever. Spend 10 minutes on social media and the toxicity of people doing this just thing. It is drenched in Pax Romana of people believing if only I can drown you in my rightness, we'll get along. Friends, have you ever seen anybody win a debate? I mean, yeah, college, high school, maybe you saw a debate and somebody at the end declares a winner, but I mean, honestly, have you ever seen anyone actually win? When I mean win, I mean like when they're done, one person goes, you know what? I looked at all your facts. I looked at all of your data. I listened to all your points. I've changed my mind. I was wrong and I'm completely changing my viewpoint, right? Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Doesn't work. But what else is there? 2,000 years ago, under the midst of Pax Romana, under the midst of the Roman Empire, a group of followers of a rabbi named Jesus said, hey, we got a new slogan. We've got a new way. We have a new kingdom underneath this one. See, his followers, like this guy named Paul, he writes in this book called Philippians, and he says, consider others as greater than yourself. He actually says, look not only into your own interests, but also into the interests of others. These followers said things like, be quick to listen and slow to respond or become angry. Jesus actually said, like when you go and sit in a room with a group of people, don't go sit at the head of the table. Because head of the table, that's the guy who gets to talk. That's the guy who's in charge. He's the guy who's right. He says, actually go sit on the floor in the corner where people listen. The power here, this new way, is to become the best listeners. Because following Jesus is the realization that the goal is to be last and not first. Because we come from the viewpoint that when you find out you're wrong, it's a gift. Because the worst thing we can ever do is waste time and energy in the wrong direction. When you find out you're wrong, it should be a thing of joy, of like, okay, great, I don't have to waste any more time in this distraction. Unfortunately, some of the guiltiest people in the world of this old way of Pax Romana is the church. I think sometimes people claim to be the followers of the Jesus movement or the people with the most facts to destroy your argument. They're the ones who show up to tell you how wrong you are. They're the first ones who would just let you know you're lost. And let me tell you about my rightness. The power of the Jesus movement, in case you might have missed it, is to become black belts in listening. Think back to the elephant in the room and the person that I speak of, or whoever it might be, or a stranger or whatever in your life, that there's an elephant in the room. Maybe what'll work is to sit and hear that person. To sit and give them a platform to share their feelings and to hear it and let it just be that. You see, in the midst of the Roman Pax Romana, the followers of Jesus had their own phrase, and it was older than that, and it was the ancient word, Shalom. They understood that the calling of the divine was to reconcile all things, and they knew the most powerful way to bring people together is to hear them out. Now, I want you to know something else, because you might have missed this. One of the most powerful tools that we have is diversity. One of the most powerful things of the Jesus movement, please hear me, is simply our diversity. That's because we're okay with not having to agree on everything. We are perfectly at peace knowing that it's okay to disagree. I don't have any anxiety because I need you to be corrected. For some of us, that's the most powerful shalom the divine can offer you right now, is that elephant in the room doesn't have to be because you can be okay with disagreeing. Friends, may you start and join in the great reconciliation that the universe is unstoppably headed towards. May you find shalom and peace with others, not in bearing them and overwhelming them and turning the knob up on the volume of your rightness, but to sit in the low place and listen and hear them, validate them, and perhaps open yourself up to the opportunity that maybe there's something you need to hear. Friends, may you be okay with sometimes we disagree. And that's why we are strong. The more viewpoints, the more perspectives, the more we can find our way to doing it the best way. My friends, may you break out of this Pax Romana 2,000-year-old old tool that didn't work. In our climate of our world where people are screaming from one side of the aisle to the other, they're turning up their bullhorns and writing larger text on their signs, may we be known as the greatest people in the world at hearing one another out. Friends, may shalom and peace be with you. Love you all. Have a good week.